November 1965. Denver, Colorado. Cold air, thin frost on the wings of airplanes, blue smoke from exhaust curls over the strip. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. The day starts like hundreds of others at Stapleton Airport. Passengers are in a hurry. Luggage trolleys are ringing. Speakers are monotonously repeating departure announcements. Everything seems ordinary. Someone leaves here every day, someone returns. One more flight, another Boeing, ready to carry people across the mountains to the west. A brand new Boeing 727, the pride of American engineering, shines with fresh paint in the parking lot at the terminal. Its sleek fuselage reflects the sun like a mirror. This is Boeing's latest development, an aircraft that promised to change the way we think about civil aviation. Compact but powerful, maneuverable but comfortable. With 3 engines in the tail and a T-tail, it seemed like a step into the future. For some, it is a symbol of progress. For others, it was a car that they had yet to learn how to handle. Today, he will have a short flight from Denver to San Francisco with a stopover in Salt Lake City. There are 91 people on board, 85 passengers and 6 crew members. An ordinary evening, an ordinary United Airlines flight number 227. On the platform, people are climbing the stairs with suitcases, newspapers, coffee cups in their hands. Someone is in a hurry to attend a business meeting. Someone is going home to their family. No one suspects that for almost half of these people, this flight will be the last. In the cockpit, the aircraft commander is 40-year-old Gail Kemmer, an experienced pilot, calm, confident, with more than 17,000 flight hours. For him, the sky is a familiar environment. He is accompanied by co-pilot Philip Spicer and flight engineer Ronald Christensen, a team that works smoothly without unnecessary words. Each of them knows what they are doing. Everyone is confident in the other. There is a slight smell of kerosene and fresh upholstery inside the aircraft. The light is soft and subdued. Passengers make themselves comfortable, and the flight attendants close the luggage racks. A short flight announcement sounds from the speakers. Everything is going according to schedule. 16 hours and 54 minutes. Permission to take off is received from the cockpit. The powerful Pratt & Whitney engines burst into a roar, and after a few seconds the liner begins to take off. The heavy metal lifts off the ground and rushes into the clear November sky. There is a slight swaying in the cabin. Someone is looking out the window, someone is taking out a magazine. Denver remains far below, and ahead is a quiet, calm road to the west. No one, not the passengers, not the crew, not even the plane itself, realizes that less than an hour later, the name United Airlines Flight 227 will forever go down in aviation history. Sometimes trouble doesn't come because of the weather, malfunction, or accident. Sometimes one detail decides everything. One choice, and even the most experienced pilot can't beat the laws of physics. The plane quickly gains altitude, leaving in the clear November air over the mountains of Colorado. The lights of evening Denver, elongated streets and small, toy-like cars remain below. The Boeing 727 runs smoothly, with almost no vibrations. The 3 powerful engines in the tail work smoothly, creating a deep, confident hum. This sound is music for any pilot, and Gail Kemmer knows it by heart. He listens, feels how the car reacts to the slightest movement of the steering wheel. Everything is under control. Everything is perfect. At an altitude of 31,000 feet, the liner enters the cruising echelon. The air here is sparse and cold, and the sun is brighter and cleaner than below. The cabin offers views of the snowy peaks of the Rocky Mountains. Kemmer leans forward slightly, correcting course. The second half of November is a time when winds often rage in these latitudes, but today is a surprisingly calm day. No thunderstorms, not a single cloud. The pilots exchange glances, a rare piece of luck. Everything is going according to plan. For passengers, this flight is no different from hundreds of others. Muted music is playing in the cabin, and a flight attendant is serving drinks. Someone is reading a newspaper, someone is dozing, someone is just looking out the window, watching as the clouds gradually give way to white peaks. They do not know that somewhere below, beyond the same mountains, the city of Salt Lake City is already waiting for them. a place that will become the last destination for many. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the conversation goes on calmly, without tension. "It's a beautiful day," Spicer remarks, looking at the horizon. "Yes, there are few of them," Kamir replies, and there is satisfaction in his voice. He loves this plane. The 727th is the pride of the aviation industry. Compact, maneuverable, and fast. A real transition into a new era of jet travel. Old four-engine jetliners like the Boeing 707 required long lanes and powerful infrastructure, and this aircraft could take off and land even where previously a jet car could only be dreamed of. 3 engines mounted in the tail section allowed the wing to remain clean, without outboard turbines, without unnecessary drag. This made him fast, quiet, and steady. But there were also special features behind the advantages. The center of gravity of this arrangement shifted backwards. This meant that when descending, and especially at low speeds, the 727 could behave unpredictably. The slightest incorrect movement of the steering wheel, too sharp a descent or an unsuccessful angle could lead to a loss of lift. That is why Boeing engineers have developed a sophisticated system of stabilization and warning signals. The plane literally spoke to the pilot, the vibration of the steering wheel, the hum, the subtle tremor. These clues were the last line between control and chaos. But experienced pilots often relied not on instruments, but on their own feelings. Habit, intuition, confidence. Gail Kemmer was one of them. He has 17,000 hours in the sky under his belt, and he's used to trusting himself more than the instruments. His plane obeyed his hands, and he was proud of it. For him, the Boeing 727 was not just a partner car that obeyed every movement. Behind the glass of the cockpit, the horizon slowly creeps down as they begin a gentle descent towards Salt Lake City. The goal is less than an hour away. Radio communication is clear, short, and fuss-free. United 227, drop to 30,000. The dispatcher says. "Got it, 30,000, Kamir replies. The sun is setting, turning the sky golden. The silhouettes of the mountains are getting softer, and the plains of Utah are already visible below them. This is the last section of the path. Below is a serene desert and twinkling lights of towns. From a height, it seems as if everything is motionless, as if time has frozen. The cabin is completely calm. Kemmer leans back slightly in his chair, and Spicer makes notes in his journal. It looks like nothing can go wrong. The plane is moving smoothly, as if on rails. The engineer checks the readings of the system's pressure, temperature, fuel consumption. Everything is in the green zone. No warnings, no alarms. If someone at that moment could have looked into the future just 40 minutes ahead, they would not have believed it. That sky looked so cloudless. 3 turbines sounded so reliable. The man who would try to cheat physics in an hour was sitting so confidently in an armchair. But so far, everything is calm. And it is precisely in this calmness that there is a deceptive premonition. Most plane crashes do not begin with an explosion, not with a cry of alarm, but with silence. From the moment when nothing foreshadows trouble, when it seems that everything is under control. And control, as you know, is an illusion, especially at an altitude of 9,000 meters. The Boeing 727 is approaching the Utah border. At an altitude of just over 9,000 meters, the landscape begins to change in the passengers' portholes. The snowy peaks of the Rocky Mountains give way to wide plains intersected by thin strands of roads and silvery mirrors of salt lakes. Salt Lake sparkles below, a city that seems quiet and peaceful, as if it doesn't even suspect that in a few minutes a tragedy will happen on its outskirts, which will be talked about for decades. The atmosphere in the cabin is still calm. Radio communication is as clear as glass. United 227, you're 25 miles east, drop to 13,000. The dispatcher's voice says. Understood, 13. Kamir replies. His voice is calm, as if everything is going according to a familiar scenario. From this moment, the preparation for landing begins. The crew receives permission for a visual approach, which means that the weather conditions allow the aircraft to land not only by instruments but also by eye, focusing on the ground, on the runway, on the system of lights located to the side of it. In clear weather, a visual approach is every pilot's dream. Hand control, clear skies, confidence in himself and the car. It all depends on the eyes and the reaction. Everything seems simple, but it is precisely in this simplicity that the trap lies. To make a safe landing, the pilot must strictly follow the so-called glide path, an imaginary inclined line leading exactly to the beginning of the runway. If the plane is above this line, it risks flying over the runway, touching the ground too late. If it is lower, it may collide with the ground even before it reaches the runway. This is the golden mean. The ideal angle is about 3 degrees. In aviation, it's almost a law of physics, neither higher nor lower. To help the pilots keep the right angle, a simple but ingenious system called VASI Visual Approach Slope Indicator is installed along the runway. At first glance, it's just a set of fixtures mounted on racks to the side of the strip. But for a pilot, it's a vital guideline. These lights speak to him in a simple and understandable language. If he sees 2 white and 2 red lights, he is on a perfect glide path. Everything is fine. If all the lights are white, the plane is too high. If everything is red, it's too low, dangerously close to the ground. Pilots even have a short rule that is repeated with a touch of irony, but with the deepest meaning. Red over white, you're all right. Red over red, you're dead. Red over white, it's okay. Red over red, you're dead. This phrase has become something of a mantra in aviation. A simple reminder that the laws of physics defy overconfidence. And every time a pilot sees these lights in front of him, he knows it's not just colors. It's a fine line between landing and disaster. But today, those lights are still far away. The crew sees only the endless expanse of the sky and the shimmering earth below. The weather is perfect, cloudless sky, visibility over 20 kilometers. Kemmer is a little relaxed. Spicer is closely monitoring the instruments. They had already made several landings in Salt Lake City, and each time it was a routine, easy flight. However, today the commander decides to do something in his own way. He wants to show the co-pilot the features of the Boeing 727, how this aircraft is able to descend on a rock, quickly losing altitude and leveling off literally at the last moment. This skill was appreciated. After all, the 727 was designed specifically for short lanes, where it was necessary to quickly extinguish altitude and speed. The car could do this, powerful turbines and special aerodynamics allowed it. But there was a limit to such a maneuver, and any experienced pilot knew that experimenting with it was like playing with fire. While the plane is gently sliding down, a calm dialogue is heard between the pilots. Without tension, without a hint of anxiety. They exchange short phrases, laugh, and discuss the specifics of the aircraft. For them, it's just a working day. But with every passing minute, the Boeing is losing altitude faster than it should. The dispatcher transmits another instruction. United 227, descend to 10,000, visual approach to lane 34 left is allowed. Got it, we're doing a visual approach, Kamir replies. He looks ahead at the horizon, where a strip of land and the lights of the airfield are already visible. Everything seems to be under control. Everything looks beautiful. From a height of 13,000 feet, the world below is serene and far away. At such moments, pilots forget about how quickly this peace can turn into chaos. While passengers are enjoying the view of the setting sun, what investigations will later call the first link in the chain of events begins in the cabin. A slight deviation, a barely noticeable detail. Nothing critical, nothing threatening. It's just that the plane is going slightly below the glide path. Just a few hundred feet. Kemmer notices this but doesn't worry. He has everything under control. The car listens to him. He is confident that he will be able to straighten it at the very lane. But in aviation, even a little can be too much. Especially when the plane weighs more than 70 tons and moves at a speed of almost 400 kilometers per hour. The decline continues. The buildings of the Salt Lake City airport are already visible on the ground. The red and white VASI lights begin to loom out of the darkness. For any other pilot, it would be a signal to check the angle and stabilize the trajectory. But today, the commander decides otherwise. He is going to show the young co-pilot how to beautifully and effectively dive under the glide path, and then lift the nose of the aircraft with a powerful jerk of the engines at the last moment. This decision is not a violation, but it's a risk. And at this point, there is a thin, almost invisible line between safety and experimentation. They enter the glide path, but too early. Vassie's red lights are now burning a little brighter than they should. The machine descends faster than prescribed by the instructions. Still within the normal range, but already on the edge. The pilots see the lane. They see her coming. Everything seems familiar, almost banal. And yet, in this apparent simplicity, danger is already emerging. Visual approach is the most beautiful stage of the flight, but it's where they most often lose control. When it seems that everything is visible. When the devices are secondary. When experience tells you, I know how to do it. In such moments, the sky is silent. It doesn't warn you. It just waits for a person to take a step into the void. The Boeing 727 is heading towards Salt Lake City, gradually descending. The sun has already sunk below the horizon, and the soft light of the last rays falls on the dashboard. The cabin is comfortably dim. The lights are flickering. The instruments are quietly crackling. The radio is hissing in a smooth background. Everything seems perfect. But it is at such moments that experienced pilots are often tempted to take a step away from standard procedures. To test the limits of possibilities, the plane, yourself, destiny. The commander of Flight 227, Gail Kemmer, feels confident. He has 17,000 flight hours under his belt. He knows the Boeing 727 from the propeller to the tail. He knows how the car behaves at all stages of the flight. He used to rely on his experience rather than instructions. The young co-pilot Philip Spicer, on the other hand, is disciplined, attentive but restrained. He respects the commander, even admires him a little. For him, Kemmer is an example, mentor, someone who not only controls an airplane, but feels it as an extension of his hands. Salt Lake City is already visible below, a scattering of lights in a darkening haze. Radio communications are reporting. United 227, visual approach is allowed. Lane 34th left. Accepted, 34th left. Kemmer replies calmly. He turns the wheel slightly, adjusting the course. Everything is going according to plan. But then, almost imperceptibly, he makes a decision. A decision that will change everything in a few minutes. He turns to the co-pilot and says in the tone of a teacher who is about to show something interesting, "Look, Phil, the Boeing 727 can descend at a higher angle than any other passenger aircraft. This is his special feature. Powerful engines allow us to quickly extinguish altitude, and then, at the right moment, thrust will pull us up like on an elevator. Look carefully." These words sound calm, without a shadow of anxiety, as part of a routine briefing. But the point is different. Kemmer decides to demonstrate a spectacular, non-standard reduction, something that cannot be prescribed in the manual. He is confident that everything is under control. His plane listens to him. He wants to show his young colleague his skills, like a captain who knows how to make a machine obey him like a tamed animal. He puts the engines on low gas. The 3 turbines in the tail slow down, and the liner begins to lose altitude faster. There are numbers on the instruments that do not cause alarm yet. The vertical speed is increasing, but it does not exceed the permissible limits. For now, Boeing is moving into a steeper decline. 2,000 feet per minute, 2,300. Almost 3 times faster than the norm for this stage of the flight. The plane seems to be diving into the darkening sky. The contours of the hills, the headlights on the highways, and the lights of the city are already visible below. Closer and closer. The co-pilot is watching. He notices that the decline has become too sharp, but doesn't say anything. After all, this is the commander. Experienced, confident, calm. He probably knows what he's doing. And the dispatcher doesn't give any warnings. There was no screaming or panic in the cabin. Just steady breathing and the sound of instruments. Kemmer smiles slightly, looking at the scales. He sees that the rate of descent is higher than normal, but deliberately does not align the trajectory. He wants to effectively show how the Boeing dutifully levels off at the last moment. For him, it's not a risk. It's a demonstration of skill. But that's exactly where most disasters begin, with the certainty that nothing bad will happen. The landing lights are already coming on below. The red and white VASI dots form straight lines along the strip. But now both pilots see only red lights, a signal that the plane is too low. I went down under the glide path too soon. United 227, you are slightly below the glide path. The dispatcher reports. Got it. The band is in sight, Kamir replies, without even looking at the instruments. This phrase is standard, but there is a tragedy hidden in its calmness. When the pilot says, lane in sight, it means that he sees the ground and believes that everything is under control. But control is already slipping away. The airliner continues to fall at an alarming rate of 11 meters per second. For passengers, this is still imperceptible. Slight turbulence, slightly increased pressure in the ears. But for an experienced pilot's eye, such figures are an alarming signal. Philip Spicer looks at the variometer. The arrow showing vertical speed is almost off the charts. He hesitates, opens his mouth as if he wants to say something, but doesn't dare. How can he challenge the decision of a captain with 17,000 flight hours? He tries cautiously anyway. Captain, we seem to be a little lower. Kemmer waves it away, almost without looking at it. Don't touch it yet, Phil. Everything is under control. These words become a point of no return. The co-pilot leans back, monitors the instruments, and meanwhile the plane is already moving beyond the safe trajectory. The angle is too steep, and the rate of descent is increasing. The engines are running at minimum thrust, and the aircraft is rapidly losing altitude. A streak is already visible behind the portholes. Getting closer. Too close. Kamir reaches for the levers, preparing for the final maneuver. He's going to dramatically increase thrust to level the car. It should be beautiful like in a textbook. Spectacular. There is only one condition: time. Take a few seconds for the engines to reach maximum power. But physics does not obey human intentions. The turbines need at least 3 to 4 seconds to spin up and give thrust. And at an altitude of several hundred meters, these seconds are an eternity. So far, everything looks calm. The pilots are silent. Lights are flickering below, and cars are moving in the distance. Only the rustle of instruments is heard in the cabin. But their verdict is already written between the numbers on the screens. And although the captain still thinks he has the situation under control, the Earth is already pulling towards them faster than he has time to realize it. The sky over Salt Lake City is already darkening as the Boeing 727 enters the final stage of descent. The city below them burns with thousands of lights, stretching away like the nerve endings of a living organism. The car is going fast, and too low. At an altitude of about 4,000 feet, approximately 1,200 meters, the liner was supposed to be on a stable glide path, an ideal, gentle path to the beginning of the runway. But the instruments show something else. They are almost 2,000 feet below normal, that is, about 600 meters. That's a lot. Too much. The descent continues at a vertical velocity of 2,300 feet per minute, about 11.5 meters per second. For large liners of this type, this is an emergency, almost critical value. There is still no panic in the cabin. But the air is already getting denser, and the plane seems to be starting to dive. Smoothly, but with dangerous acceleration. The dispatcher on the ground notices the anomaly first. His screen shows that the mark of board 227 is below the expected trajectory. He picks up the microphone and says in a calm, almost routine voice, United 227, your position is slightly below the glide path. In response, the commander's confident voice is heard on the air. United 227, understood. A stripe in the field of view. This phrase sounds calm, even relaxed, but it already contains a mistake. When the pilot says lane in sight, he confirms that he sees the ground and controls the descent. But seeing does not mean understanding. They do see the strip, but because of the night perspective, the lights of the city and the angle of view, it seems to them as if it is closer than it really is. The illusion of perception is one of the most insidious enemies of the pilot during visual approaches. At this moment, their position resembles a taut string. Any unnecessary movement and it will burst. The plane is flying straight towards the ground. Co-pilot Spicer is silent, although the arrow on the variometer screen is still pointing down, beyond the normal range. He sees that the rate of decline is almost 3 times higher than the standard one. But trust in the commander is stronger than anxiety. This is Gail Kemmer, a veteran, a man who always does well. How can I object to him? How do you say, "Captain, you're wrong"? He decides anyway, quietly, almost hesitantly, "Sir, we seem to be a little low." Kemmer answers without taking his eyes off the strip. "Don't touch it yet." These 3 words decide the fate of 91 people. Don't touch it yet. Don't interfere yet. Don't break the rhythm yet. The plane continues to descend, as if in a slow fall. Houses, highway lights, and even individual cars are already visible below, and everything is quiet in the cabin. No lights are flashing, no alarms. Only the instruments whisper softly, "Too fast. It's too low." Kemmer watches the horizon. There is no fear in his eyes, just concentration. He's waiting for the right moment. In his head, everything is simple. Now, when there is less than a kilometer left to land, he will give the engines full power, and the liner will align beautifully. He's done this dozens of times. But there is one time. The Pratt & Whitney JT8D turbine engines on this Boeing need a few seconds to spin up and give thrust. They are not instantaneous. It takes from 3 to 5 seconds from the moment when the pilot switches the levers to takeoff mode to the actual increase in thrust. In flight, it's an eternity. At low altitude, it's a verdict. The co-pilot glances at the variometer again. The numbers are scary. The decline continues. They had already passed the checkpoint where they were supposed to be at a safe altitude. The lane is getting closer, but the angle is too steep. The Boeing is approaching the ground at such an angle that it looks more like a dive. "Descent rate 2300, the flight engineer says softly. "Understood." The commander replies shortly, "No panic, just cold confidence." The seconds drag on. The lane is approaching too fast. The headlights reflect off the windshield. The plane is already a few hundred meters from the ground. No sudden movements, no attempts to straighten out. Kemmer is waiting, and suddenly a crucial moment. He pulls the steering wheel towards himself and simultaneously moves the engine control levers forward into takeoff mode. The engines are roaring, the cabin air is filled with vibration, but the thrust is growing slowly. Too slow. The co-pilot instinctively tries to help. He also reaches for the levers, trying to speed up the process, but Kemmer stops him with a wave of his hand. "I said don't touch it." The liner is still falling. The sound in the cabin changes. A slight humming turns into vibration, then into a loud roar. The warning system is triggered. A short signal, the steering wheel is shaking. This is a stick shaker vibration that warns of an impending stall. The plane is already close to losing lift. At this moment, everything is mixed up. Noise, light, vibration, the breathing of the pilots. The earth grows before my eyes. Kemmer pulls the steering wheel sharply towards himself, trying to bring the liner out of the descent. Boeing reacts, but it's too late. The turbines are just starting to gain momentum. At 17:52 local time, just 100 meters from the end of runway 34L, the airliner touches the ground at a tremendous vertical speed. The blow was short, dull, and monstrous. The landing gear is breaking down. The right strut pierces the fuselage, the fuel escapes. A split second later, a fire breaks out. The plane glides across the ground, leaving behind a bright streak of flame. 800 meters of hell. 800 meters that separate life from the end. But it all started with 3 calm words. Don't touch it yet. The plane is heading for the ground. The height is only a few tens of meters. An alarm sounds in the cabin, short, rhythmic, alarming tones. Vibration begins on the steering wheel. Stick shaker warns about a critical decrease in speed, about the approach of stall. The steering wheel is literally shaking in the hands of the commander. This is the last warning. But Gail Kemmer is already pulling the levers as hard as she can. The plane is heavy, inert, as if resisting. The 3 engines in the tail are roaring, but thrust has not yet reached its maximum. The turbines spin up slowly. The metal blades rotate at an incredible speed. but the inertia of the multi-ton machine is inexorable. The co-pilot sees how the ground fills the entire windshield. "Thrust! Stop it!" he shouts. "It's full." The commander answers, but it's too late. The seconds stretch out. 3, 2, 1. Hit. A dull, crunching sound, like a huge metal beast crashing into the ground. The fuselage is crumpling from the overload. The floor is moving like a wave. The main landing gear pierces the tanks, and flames instantly flare up. The explosion is not loud, but bright, like a flash of welding, only 1,000 times stronger. At the same moment, the plane loses its landing gear, falls on its belly, and, sliding along the concrete strip, explodes a storm of sparks around itself. A fiery tail stretches behind like a comet. Metal screeches, tears, cracks. The fuselage splits in front of the wings. The front part, where the pilots and passengers in the front rows are located, separates from the main mass and slides further down the lane. The tail section, where the engines and tanks are located, turns into a hell of flames. The fire engulfs the cabin in seconds. The temperature inside instantly rises above 1,000 degrees. The plastic melts, the upholstery of the chairs flares up, the metal glows red-hot. The people in the back don't even have time to realize what happened. The fire is coming down the aisle like a living wave. The front part, miraculously detached from the main fuselage, continues to slide along the ground. Flight attendants, passengers, pilots, everyone who is closer to the nose feels terrible pressure, as if their bodies are pressed against the seats. Dust, smoke, shaking, the sound of tearing metal. Everything happens at the same time. The plane stops after about 800 meters from the point of impact. There is darkness mixed with fire all around. The fuselage is torn apart. Smoke and flames are escaping from the cracks. There is chaos inside. Screams. The smell of kerosene and burning plastic. People who have woken up after a blow do not understand where they are. The floor is warped, the chairs are uprooted, and everything is filled with smoke. Someone is moaning, someone is calling for help. Those who are conscious are trying to get out. There is light outside. The sky, streaks of fire, glimpses of airport searchlights in the distance. A flight attendant with a broken arm shouts to passengers, pointing to a crack in the hull. "There's a way out. Over here. Faster." They crawl through the smoke. Every breath is like a knife stab in the lungs. There is almost no air. People are clutching at each other, helping those who can't walk. Someone pulls a child. Someone pulls a neighbor. No one thinks, no one cares about words. It's just an instinct to get away from the fire. Several dozen people manage to get out of the front section. They crawl out and fall to the ground. The crackle of fire and the hum of the turbines, which are still spinning by inertia, can be heard. Sirens are approaching in the distance, and there's hell in the tail section, where the main fuel supply has accumulated. The flames are raging unstoppably. The temperature is too high for rescuers to get there. Fire bursts out of the windows like the breath of a monster. People trapped in the back don't have time to get out. Everything happens in a matter of seconds. Survivors are lying on the ground next to the wreckage. Someone is in shock. Someone is screaming. Someone is just looking at the fire, not believing what is happening. One of the passengers, covered in soot, wanders towards the lights of the airport and whispers, "We were so close. So close." A few minutes later, firefighters arrive at the scene of the accident. They throw foam jets at the flaming hull. The flame resists, as if alive, but gradually subsides. A thick smell of kerosene and burning remains in the air. When the fire finally subsides, a terrible picture opens up before the rescuers. Charred fragments of the plane remained. The front part lies apart, twisted, but recognizable. Everything behind the wings was burned to the ground. Of the 91 people on board, 48 survived. The rest remained forever in the flames of Flight 227. Those who escaped later said that at first they did not realize that they were alive. Everything was too quiet. It was too unrealistic. They looked at the fire, at the destroyed plane and could not believe that a minute ago they were sitting where now there are only ashes. Night falls completely. The fire has been extinguished, but the flames are still smoldering in the metal seams. Thick black smoke rises above the airfield, which can be seen from tens of kilometers away. This is how the flight ends, which began with perfect weather, a calm cabin and confidence in control. Control is a deceptive thing. It lasts until reality intervenes. And reality, like physics, does not forgive mistakes. The night over Salt Lake City was as quiet as ever. When the fire finally went out, only darkness remained, thick as fumes, hanging over the field. Broken fragments of the fuselage, scattered across the strip, were still smoking. There are traces of foam from fire trucks, charred chairs, and melted pieces of metal on the ground. The wind rustled softly in the charred wreckage. The rescuers stood in silence. At such times, words are superfluous. The screams, the noise, the panic are gone. There was only silence, a silence that is heard louder than any sound. A few hours later, a group from the Civil Aviation Council, the predecessor of the current NTSB, arrives at the site. Gray raincoats, folders, cameras, metal suitcases with appliances. Their task is simple but ruthless, to find the reason. Not a guess, not a version, but the truth. Even if it's unpleasant. Even if it's not in cars, but in people. Investigators are examining the crash site. The first thing that catches your eye is the line of impact. The traces of touching the ground begin just 100 meters from the beginning of the runway. This means that the plane did not just fall short of it. It crashed literally at the very threshold. A few more seconds and he would have sat up normally. The technical commission first checks the obvious. The engine. 3 Pratt & Whitney JT8D turbines are still in place, twisted but not destroyed. During the analysis, experts see that they were all operating at full power at the time of impact. This means that the aircraft was controllable and the fuel was supplied normally. There was no explosion, there was no fire in the air, there was no system failure. The engines were working properly. Then the hydraulics, wing mechanization, and steering surfaces are checked. Everything is in working order. There are no signs of failures. There are no signs that the equipment failed. One of the experts says quietly, "The plane was in perfect working order." These words hang in the air like a sentence. Because if the plane is in good condition, then there is only one option left. The human factor. The investigators are moving on to the main thing, extracting the recorders. They find them in the tail section, among the twisted metal. The black boxes are actually bright orange to make them easier to spot among the debris. One captures the flight parameters: speed, altitude, heading, vertical speed, rudder position. The other is a voice recorder, recording everything that happened in the cockpit. When the tapes are dried and restored, the process begins, which in those years was done manually. Frame-by-frame listening, decoding of each word. The first thing that catches your eye is no signs of panic. The entire flight until the last minute is an ideal, almost monotonous crew job. Radio exchange is calm. The readings are stable. But in the last 20 seconds, the sound changes. At first, a quiet alarm is heard. Then the vibration of the steering wheel. Then a short dialogue. Thrust. Don't touch it yet. A few seconds of silence. Then the sharp sound of levers, the noise of increasing engine speeds. And the last phrase is a short scream, a thud, a break in the recording. After that, silence. Investigators have listened to these tapes dozens of times. They compare words with flight parameters, synchronize data with the moments of sounds, and record every change in altitude. The picture fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. And when it finally becomes clear, everyone in the room is silent. The cause is not a malfunction. No storm, no instrument error, no automation failure. The reason is a person's decision. A few days later, the investigators visit the hospital where Captain Gail Kemmer is lying. He survived, suffered burns and fractures, but remained conscious. There is fatigue and pain on his face, but not fear. When asked the question that torments everyone, why did he choose such a dangerous angle of descent? He does not try to justify himself. "I wanted to show you," he says softly. I wanted to show the co-pilot how the 727 behaves. I thought I could straighten out in front of the lane. There is no emotion in his voice, only regret. He realized it was too late. These words become the quintessence of tragedy. I wanted to show you. They have everything. Confidence, pride, experience, and that fine line where professionalism turns into self-confidence. When the commission publishes the final report, the wording sounds dry, without pathos, as always in aviation. The cause of the disaster was the inability of the commander to react in a timely manner to the excessive speed of descent and control it at the final stage of landing. But behind these cold words, there is a human drama hidden. The pilot, confident in himself, lost in the fight against physics. He underestimated the time it takes for the engines to reach power. I underestimated the angle, the speed, the distance. I underestimated the fact that humans can't outsmart aerodynamics. This disaster has become a lesson, but a lesson bought at too high a price. The investigators, having finished their work, leave the scene of the tragedy. There are still traces of burnt kerosene, pieces of metal, and charred pages of instructions on the strip. The silence of the black boxes provided answers. And these answers are the hardest, because they're not about the plane. They're about a man. The morning after the disaster was deceptively calm. The sun rose again over Salt Lake City, warming the cold concrete strip where metal and kerosene had burned yesterday. The airport has already been cleared. The flames had been extinguished long ago. The debris had been removed, but the air still smelled of burning and silence. Workers are applying fresh markings where Flight 227 ended, and only they know that under this paint is a place where human error has remained. The official report of the Civil Aviation Council was released a few months later. A dry, unbiased document with dozens of pages listing facts, diagrams, graphs, and parameters, but the result fit in one line. The cause of the crash was pilot error, an untimely reaction to excessive descent speed during landing. Not a malfunction, not a storm, not a combination of circumstances. Human error. Commander Gail Kemmer survived. And for the rest of his life, he could not forgive himself for what happened that November evening. He never returned to the cockpit. His fate has become a reminder for a whole generation of pilots. Experience is not a defense against mistakes if self-confidence is behind it. At the commission meeting, the investigators analyzed the chain of events in detail, step by step, from the moment of descent to the collision. Every decision of the commander, every reaction of the co-pilot, every instrument signal. From this sequence, a concept was born that would later become the foundation of modern aviation. Stable approach. Now this is the golden rule. At the final stage of the flight, the aircraft must have a stable speed, a constant angle of descent, and a fully configured landing configuration. If something does not go according to plan, altitude, course, thrust, the pilot is obliged to go on a second lap. No arguments, no heroism, because in aviation, heroism is the enemy of safety. Flight 227 was one of those cases after which the pilots stopped competing with technology. They started listening to her. This disaster also became one of the starting points for the development of a new philosophy of interaction in the cockpit, CRM, crew resource management, or crew resource management. Now the co-pilot is not a silent observer, but an equal participant in decision-making. He is obliged to intervene if he sees a threat. Pilots learn to talk, argue, and defend safety, even if they are faced with a man with 3 decades of flight experience. Because in the sky, titles don't matter. There is only one important goal there: to return to Earth alive. From the tragedy of Flight 227, a new generation of procedures, standards, and rules has grown, which today are perceived as obvious. But once there were none, and every one of them, every rule, every line in the instructions was written not in ink, but in someone's lives. If the co-pilot had insisted that day, if he had said, "We're too low," if the commander had listened, the story might have ended differently. But aviation does not know the subjunctive mood. She lives in the present so as not to repeat the past. Today, decades later, at every airport in the world, on every runway, the same lights are on, white and red. VASI, the silent guardian of human self-confidence. They don't judge, They don't warn with words, they don't shout. They just burn, telling the pilot, you're higher, you're lower, you're on the right track. And somewhere in these lights lives the memory of those who did not have time to align. At sunset, over the same airfield, another plane comes in for landing. The modern liner is sleek, silent, and controlled by hundreds of sensors and systems. The crew speaks briefly and calmly. The speed is stable. The glide path is stable. The stripe is in the field of view. We continue. 2 white lights, 2 red ones. Everything is perfect. The landing gear touches the runway gently, as if the ground itself takes it back. The passengers applaud. For them, it's just the landing, the end of the journey. But for aviation, it is the result of decades of training, mistakes, blood, and experience. Only the lights of the strip remain in the frame, disappearing into the night. The voiceover is quiet, almost a whisper. There are no small things in aviation. Every detail is a matter of life. And these words seem to be interwoven with all the lessons that the tragedy of United Airlines Flight 227 has given. Because there is no place for pride in the sky. Only mindfulness, discipline, and the memory of those who once realized too late that red above red is not just lights. This is a boundary that cannot be crossed.